Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inter, and welcome back to the channel for a Smite 2 item tier list for OB1. With Vegas going on over the weekend, we saw a bunch of new stuff pulled out in terms of item meta and stuff like that. Some stuff we already thought was good was definitely proved as good, and some stuff that we thought might have been bad kind of came out of the woodwork and surprised people. And even some stuff we thought was good turned out to be bad and wasn't really built at all. And I've had quite a few requests to do an item tier list. People want to know, what should you be building in the current meta. So we're going to go through every single item in Smite 2, or every single tier 3 item at least. I've tried to categorize them as well, so we'll be going through the int items first, then the strength items, then the ADC items, then the magical and physical defense, and so on. So I will try and chapter the video if you're interested in, if you're a mid laner, you just want to look at the int build section, I'll try and chapter the video as best I can. So use the timestamps on the timeline bar to jump around to what you need, but let's just jump right in with Book of Thoth as the first item, which I think I'll put in B tier. I think it's a good item. Got explanations for all the tiers here, so needs nerfs, great items, good items, situational items, or just decent items in general. Usually bad items, but they might have some weird use case, and they're just awful. Don't ever build these. So Book of Thoth I think is a good item. It gives a pretty good amount of it. It gives 10 flat pen on evolution. Flat pen's quite hard to come by, but it is very slow. That's the main problem with Book of Thoth. When you could be going much faster items in your build, like Gem of Focus, Soul Gem, maybe even Doom Mob, there's a lot faster ways to get online, and you can kind of get pushed out in the early game. And with how much farm is available around mid, around the map in general, you really don't want to get pushed out in the early game at the moment, and Book of Thoth kind of will get pushed out by something like Soul Gem. But if you need that really high int and the flat pen, it is one of the best damaging items once you've got it fully stacked up. It's very good on Zeus, those gods that really need super high int that you won't get from something like Soul Gem. So yeah, overall, I think it's a good item. You can build it, but there are also other options for mid that I think are a little bit better. Rod to Hootie is a great item right now, in my opinion. Int is very highly available at the moment. You can get a lot of int in your build, and the 20% boost from this item can be really, really powerful if you're stacking a lot of int. Comes to some percent pen as well. Big fan of Rod to Hootie. Obsidian Shard, great item. It's obvious. It's 20% pen. You need this in all of your mid builds, otherwise you're going to only tickle tanks. This should be in every single mid build, unless you're going something like Totem of Death instead. You're going to need some kind of percent pen in your mid build. Soul Gem goes to the needs nerfs S tier category, in my opinion. Soul Gem, as I was talking about with Book of Thoth, this is generally the go-to rush for most mid laners at the moment. Provides a bunch of extra damage when it procs, a bunch of healing when it procs. It's got intelligence, it's got cooldown rate, it's got a bit of lifesteal. It's just an insanely good item right now. It basically has everything you need and comes online a lot faster than something like Book of Thoth. Soul Gem is great right now. You can also rush it occasionally on some solo laners like Chak, maybe even Amaterasu, but it is mostly a mid laner item. Next up we have Gem of ISO, which I think I will put in decent / situational. I think it's an okay item, but you're really not building it too much. Guardian solos aren't super in the meta, and the ones that are don't really need this slow too much. It's pretty good on Poseidon. You can maybe find some use for it on some other mages, but I think it's very situational. Honestly, I'm tempted to put it in usually bad, to be honest, but I think situational is probably more accurate for it. There are some picks that can make good use of it. We'll see as the tier list goes on, though. I may end up moving it down to D tier. Doom Mob, I think I will put in decent. This one's not situational. You can just go out on every mid laner in the mid lane, but I think it is just decent. I don't think Doom Mob is super good right now. It just doesn't really provide the powerful impact that it did in Smite 1. It's not giving you quite as much int as you'd like. It's only giving you maybe a tiny bit more int than Book of Thoth, and Book of Thoth's also giving you the infinite mana and the 10 flat pen. And if you're building more mana and you build Book of Thoth, probably ends up giving more int than Doom Mob. Yes, it gives you the movement speed, which can be really nice on certain picks, Zeus or whatever that might want the movement speed. But even on Zeus, I think you just go Book of Thoth. I think Book of Thoth is kind of just a better version of Doom Mob right now. Maybe on some junglers, some int-based junglers, you might want Doom Mob, Aladdin potentially. But I just don't really find too much of a use for Doom Mob. I don't think it's a terrible item, to be honest, but I just think there's better options to rush in mid lane, like Soul Gem or Book of Thoth. Demonic Grip is awful. You should never build this. It's an int attack speed percent pen item, and there just currently aren't any characters that ever want to use this in the game. With the new Smite 2 system of strength in it, you just, if you're an auto attacker, you're building strength. There's no real reason to build this on an auto attacker when you could just build Executioner, which is the same item, but it gives you strength instead, which is going to add a lot more damage to your basic attacks. Maybe at some point we'll get some gods that actually want to make use of intelligence and attack speed in the same build, but at the moment those don't exist, and therefore Demonic is useless. Necronomicon, I'm going to put in the usually bad tier. This might be a bit of a hot take. We did see it pulled out occasionally at Vegas, most notably by BettyQ on Ra, but I don't think he looked very good on it, and I don't think its item's very good either. Yes, this item gives 200 intelligence. That is by far the most of any intelligence item in the game, which can be pretty insane. But you lose all the stacks when you die, and if you're just playing random uncoordinated ranked games, you're not going to just live forever with this item. You will get killed at some point, and then it goes down to being 50 int, and then you have to try and stack it up when you only have 50 int from your first item, which is going to be hard because you got to get kills with it. Or kills or assists, I believe. You don't necessarily have to get the kills, but you significantly weaken. You lose 150 int when you die with this item, and therefore it can be kind of hard to stack back up once you've died with it. But even when it is fully stacked, I don't think this item is super amazing. I think fully stacked, this item is just good. And that's kind of the problem. You know, this item with such a risk attached to it where you lose all of the stacks, you lose 150 imp when you die. The item should be absolutely, unquestionably the best item in the game when it's fully stacked up, and it's just not. It's just good. And the main reason for that is that you lose 30 of each protections. You lose 10 of each protections per stack. So if you're at max stacks, you're losing 30 of each protections, and that's just not worth it. Yes, having 200 in on one item is going to increase your damage a lot, but you're going to take more damage than you are dealing more, if you understand what I mean by that. Like, you're just going to be taking far too much damage. You're going to get nuked immediately before you can even get your damage off with this item. I just think it's bad. Typhon's Fang is also bad. I wouldn't recommend ever building this, to be honest. It's int and lifesteal. It's a lot of lifesteal, but generally you're not looking to build a lot of lifesteal in your int-based mid builds. The only lifesteal item that's particularly good is Soul Gem, and that's not really because it has lifesteal, because it has the on-hit healing and damage and cooldown rate and int and stuff. So yeah, Typhon's Fang pretty bad. Totem of Death, I think we'll put in decent / situational. Totem of Death is really good on the gods that can use it super well. This is the one where whenever you hit a god with an ability, you gain a stack of percent pen. And so it's kind of like an Obsidian Shard, but better on some gods, worse on most gods. Most gods, you'll just want Obsidian Shard, but some gods can be really good users of Totem. Zeus, Anubis, you know, any gods with tick damage are going to be really good with Totem of Death. And so it can be really good, but it is very situational. You just got to pick it on the right gods. Polynomicon, I think I'll also throw to decent / situational. It's a pretty decent item. It has no internal cooldown on it anymore in Smite 2, which can be really valuable if, you know, you're throwing out a lot of, like, kind of auto-canceling with an int-based character. Can be really good in that regard. You got to build a lot of int for it to be worth it, and you got to pick it on the right kind of gods that utilize Polynomicon really well, but I think it can be good. Rod of Asclepius, I think I'll also throw in situational. Again, it's just, you're going to need this against anti-heal if you're a healer. But it is good in those cases. You know, if you're playing like Aphrodite or whatever, and they're building a shit ton of anti-heal into you, you can pop this and just make sure you get one heal off guaranteed with no anti-heal. But it is very situational. You're only going to want it on those big team healer gods. I don't think you want this on stuff like, you know, your Mojo or anyone with self-sustain. I think it is purely for those big team healers. Cosmic Horror, I think I'll just throw to usually bad. I don't think the item's awful. I think you can build it. I think it's okay. It just comes with like int and 20 cooldown rate. This item used to be like super good back in the early alpha days, but they kind of nerfed it and added in other items that are just better. There's easier ways to get your cooldown rate than going Cosmic Horror. You have to go it late in the build, which is kind of annoying. You know, you got to delay your cooldown rate a little bit if you're building this, because you need over 325, I believe it is, item intelligence. So you're going to need like probably at least 3 items online before you buy this. And honestly, it's just not that crazy. You know, it's 20 cooldown rate. That's nothing super impressive. If it was 25, this item might be a bit better, or they could even make it 30 but lower the int on it, just so, you know, it is that big cooldown bomb item. You know, you're sacrificing maybe a lot of int for it. I think it has 90 int right now. You know, they could maybe nerf the int down to like 50, but buff the cooldown rate to 30, and then there's actually an attractive niche for this item as like the best cooldown rate int item in the game. But at the moment, there's just better cooldown rate and int items that you could go. Staff of Myrddin, I will throw in decent / situational. I think this item can be really good, but on very niche picks. This is the one where you press the active and your next basic ability has no cooldown. This is really good on Zeus because Detonate no longer removes the charges in Smite 2, so you can just throw your one into the back line and double Detonate, and that's going to 100% a lot of carries if you get some bounces on them. That's the main use I found for it, but there's probably going to be other mages that get added down the line that are going to be really good with this, I think. But yeah, very situational. It can be really good on certain picks. It can be completely useless on certain picks because it is very expensive and doesn't come with a lot of base stats. Spirit Desolation, I'm going to throw to usually bad. I don't think this item is particularly good right now. It comes with like int and cooldown rate and int and percent pen, and then the passive gives you the like Jotun's effect, basically reducing your cooldowns when you get a kill. Overall, this item's just kind of bad. Like, there's much better things you would rather have in your int-based mid builds. I don't think it's like terrible, but there's just better things. Kind of like Cosmic Horror, I guess. Soul Reaver, I'll also throw to usually bad. This item got absolutely omega nerfed. It was completely broken for like quite a few months on the initial alpha launch of the game, but then they absolutely just deleted this item from existence, which honestly I'm not opposed to. It was way too strong for way too long. But yeah, the amount of damage this thing is doing is just not really that relevant. It's probably doing about as much as like a Soul Gem proc would do, honestly, a lot of the time. It's just really not that good. There's much better int items you can go for your build. Divine Ruin will throw to great items. It's anti-heal. Anti-heal is incredibly valuable at the moment. There's a lot of healing going around from items, from stuff like your Moja and Aphrodite, from self-sustain, from stuff like Chark, Hercules, Sobek, that kind of stuff. Anti-heal is really valuable. The base stats on this item are okay for the cost, considering you get that very powerful anti-heal effect. Bloodbound Book, I think, is pretty bad. I think I'll throw it to the F tier, honestly. I think it's probably worse than these items that are in D tier. I think there's a niche for these items. You can put them in your build and you won't be absolutely trolling, but I think Bloodbound Book is just kind of awful. This is the lifesteal int-based item that gives you a health shield active effect, and then your lifesteal heals nearby allies while the shield holds. But a lot of the time, that's going to be a pretty irrelevant passive effect because the shield's going to break pretty damn quickly. It's not that big of a shield, and you're going to be using it when you're about to take damage. Otherwise, what's the point in using it? And so the shield breaks really quickly. You don't get much value from the effects. Bracer, I think I'll throw to usually bad. I don't think it's time super good right now. Again, it kind of suffers the same thing as Demonic Grip, where like intelligence, attack speed is just kind of like a weird niche that no one really fills at the moment. But I think it is a little better than Demonic Grip. It can find some use, you know, maybe on something like an Amaterasu. We did see that before they reworked this item. And honestly, I think it's just kind of waiting on us to get some good intelligence, attack speed characters to actually fill that niche, because at the moment, there's just no reason to do that. You would just go strength on something like Sol or whatever. Chronos Pendant is fine. I think I'll throw it to C tier, not because it's situational, but just because it's decent. It's okay if you want to like hyper max cooldown in your build. You know, it does come with 25 cooldown rate, the second highest in the game, only behind Tekko Kagi. 25 is basically the highest in the game. Tekko Kagi's a weird outlier that has 30 for some reason. So it's basically the highest cooldown rate available in the game. Very low int though, and of course the passive that is a flat cooldown reduction. So if you're stacking in your build, the passive becomes more valuable from this because it's flat reduction. But the int is so incredibly low on this item. You know, you buy this, your damage is basically not going to change. All you're going to do is get more cooldown, which can be valuable, you know, if you really do want that cooldown, which is why I think it's in the decent tier, but I wouldn't say it's anything too crazy. Worldstone, I think I'll also throw to C tier. Worldstone's a very interesting one. This is the one that reduces your ultimate cooldown by 20%, which can be really powerful. I haven't found any super amazing uses of this item yet. You know, in theory, maybe it's good on something like Agni or maybe a Kate, you know, these really powerful, high impact ultimates it could be really good with. But I'm still going to throw it in C tier because it is very situational. You definitely don't build this on like every mid build. You want to build this on gods that are really heavily reliant on their ultimates, like Agni, like a Kate, that kind of stuff. Gem of Focus, it's S or it's A. I think I'm going to throw it to A. I don't think Gem of Focus immediately needs nerfs the same way Soul Gem does, but this is also one of the core items for the vast majority of mid lane builds right now. It gives you intelligence, cooldown rate, movement speed. It's just a really powerful item. Super good for those more immobile mages as well, you know, Kate, Zeus, that kind of stuff that really need the mobility if they don't have a traditional dash. And it's just a super good item right now. A lot of mid builds are just Soul Gem into Gem of Focus, and that's generally what you will go for the early game if you're not going Book of Thoth. Dreamer's Idol, I'll throw to the C tier. Very situational in my opinion. I thought this item was going to be better than it was when they initially revealed it. It does have 140 in and that 25% boost. Displacement immunity when you press the boost as well, but that's usually not going to be too relevant except for in very specific matchups. But yeah, the reason it's situational is because you really want an insanely high int build for this thing to work. You know, I guess if you're going like Necronomicon or if you're going like, you know, a Book of Thoth, like Rodatahui, like insanely high int items in your build, this can be really good. I've tried it out, you know, you can hit like 1300 in one build without any power potions, which is kind of nuts. On really high int scaling gods, it can be good. But that's basically all the int items covered. If that's what you're interested in, we're going to move on to these strength items now. Strength ability base first and then strength ADC after that. So Avatar's Parashu, I think I'm going to throw into good. I think this is slightly better than Dreamer's Idol, mostly because the base stats are just so much better. This thing has 100 strength, whereas Dreamer's Idol only has 140 int. And generally, int is usually about 2 times as available. So, you know, if this has 100 strength, this should probably have 200 int to be roughly equivalent in terms of the power that you're getting. So yeah, 100 strength on one item is absolutely insane. Just buying this item straight up adds 100 damage to all of your auto attacks and probably a lot of damage to your abilities as well. And then you can press that boost, you know, building a high strength build, using Heartseeker, which we'll talk about in a second. Building stuff like Transcendence, you know, maybe a Pendulum Blade or something that's got quite high strength. This item can be really good. I think it's slightly better than Dreamer's Idol. Heartseeker, though, 1000% needs nerfs. If there was an S+ tier, Heartseeker's going in there. This item's busted. I've been saying it for a long time that it was going to be a big problem once they actually buffed up strength-based jungler items to actually be good. This thing deals % max health damage based on your strength. It's 2.5% of your strength is equal to a percentage of their max health in damage, which is just insane. So basically, how you can think about it is for every 100 strength that you have, you're dealing 2.5% max health damage with Heartseeker. So if you have 300 strength, you're dealing 7.5. If you have 400 strength, you're dealing 10% of their max health in, I believe it's physical damage, not true damage, but it's still an absolutely insane amount. This thing's hitting like almost as hard as your abilities. Like it's almost doubling the damage of your abilities if you have like a crazy build with it, if you have it like Parashu and stuff like that. This item's just busted. It should be in every single ability-based jungler build. If you don't build it there, you're trolling in my opinion. Avenging Blade, I don't know with Avenging Blade, man. I think I'm going to throw it to the C tier just because I think it's decent. No one really builds it, to be honest. I think part of the reason is that it only goes off in the jungle, and so if a lane spills into a team fight or on sieges, it's a bit of a useless item. Also, for ganks, it's really bad, so like maybe you might want it later in the build when like jungle team fights start to happen more, but if you're ganking people in lanes, unless they like run into a side jungle, you're not going to get much value from this passive because you have to be in the jungle for it to apply the slow. So yeah, I think it's just a little bit hard to use, but honestly, if this didn't have the jungle requirement, it would be an insanely good item. It's just it's sometimes hard to use. Swan Spear, great item. item. This comes with flat pen. That's basically the main reason you're building it. It comes with strength, maybe cooldown rate. Got Smite 2.live open on the side. Oh, it's penetration, yeah. 45 strength, 5% pen, and then up to 20 flat pen depending on your level for 4 seconds on hit. And this is just really good. Flat pen is super hard to come by in the game. They removed a lot of it from items like Jotuns and stuff like that, so it's kind of hard to come by. And just having this giving you 20 flat shred, you can combine this with like Stone of Binding and a Bruiser jungle build and have 35 flat shred as soon as you hit ability. It's really good right now. I don't think it's like completely essential in a jungle build, but I think it is really good, and you can absolutely slot it into your jungle builds and be very happy about it. Serrated Edge, I think I'm going to put to good. I think Serrated Edge is fine. We've seen quite a few people building it, especially in like the pro scene and stuff like that. I think it's an okay item. I don't think it's anything super insane though. I think you can build it. I think you can skip it and it won't be that big of an issue. The lifesteal's not that relevant, but it's just come with generally like pretty good base stats for you. Jotun's Wrath, great item. This is mostly what I rush on a lot of my ability-based junglers like Loki, Thanatos, all that kind of stuff. It's got cooldown rate, it's got strength, it's got a passive that gives you more cooldown. It's just really good. Most ability-based junglers want a first item that gives strength and cooldown rate. That's just generally going to be really good for you. Get more abilities up more often, deal more damage. And Jotun's is one of the best ones in the game in my opinion. Reaper. I think I'm going to throw it to situational. Reaper is really, really good. This thing provides a lot of strength and lifesteal, but I don't think most junglers really need the lifesteal is the problem. This can be really good on Pele. It can be pretty good on Thanatos as well, especially non-aspect Thanatos. But ultimately, I think it's a little bit situational. Hydra's Lament will throw to great items. I think Hydra's Lament is very good. It can be situational. You don't want it on every single jungler, but a lot of the junglers in the game right now are auto-attack cancelers. You know, Loki, Thor, Susanoo, Thanatos all want this item. Also, Ula wants this item as well. Jingwei occasionally builds this item too. It's just really good. Pendulum Blade, I'm going to throw to good. I'm a big fan of this item. I think it's a bit underrated at the moment. It has pretty attractive base stats if we go over to Smite 2.live. It's got 60 strength, which is definitely one of the higher amounts in the game on a strength-based jungler item. 15 cooldown rate, which is decent. And then obviously that active effect, 3 seconds off of your basic cooldowns every 50 seconds, which is kind of nuts. Like, I believe this item was on like a 2-minute cooldown when they initially added it. They've reduced it substantially, and 50 seconds is low enough that it's probably going to be up for every single fight. Unless you like have a fight and then disengage for like 30 seconds and then re-engage or something. Most of the time, this is going to be up at least once every single fight, which is kind of crazy. And you can absolutely make some plays with it. You know, if you build a high cooldown rate build, it's flat reduction, much like we talked about with Chronos Pendant, so it becomes more valuable the more cooldown rate you have in your build. If your cooldowns are 6 seconds, it's half off of them. If your cooldowns are 12 seconds, it's only a quarter off them. And so if you do have a lot of cooldown rate in your build on some junglers, especially like this on Thanatos, you can pretty much just like kit dump, wait a couple of seconds, press Pendulum Blade, and your kit's like back up immediately. It can be really powerful. People don't expect it. Transcendence, I think, is also good. I think Transcendence is fine right now. It comes with flat pen. It's a bit like Book of Thoughts. It's a bit slower to get online. Obviously, you build this on Ula. You can build it on some junglers as well, in my opinion, especially if you're ahead. Yeah, if you rush like a Jotuns into a Hydra's and you've stomped the early game, you're like 5-0, you can go Transcendence, stack it up pretty easily because you're doing very high damage. And I think it's a pretty good item, but by no means essential in jungle builds. Brawler's Beat Stick will throw to great for the same reason as Brawlers, for the same reason as Divine, sorry. The strength on this is really high. I think it's like 60 or something. Comes with 5% pen, which is a pretty nice additional effect. And then obviously buying this for the anti-heal. Bloodforge, I think, is pretty bad, honestly. You could maybe argue it's situational, but I think I'm going to put it in usually bad. It's basically the same thing as Bloodbound Book, but I think strength-based lifesteal is better than int-based lifesteal at the moment. So you're much more likely to want to go Bloodforge, you know, maybe on an ADC, maybe on a jungler, but probably not. I think overall you shouldn't really build this item, but I don't think it's like a never build it. I think maybe you could find a use for it. Crusher, does it go to great or does it go to good? Probably to great, I think. I think Crusher is really good right now. This just adds 35% of your strength onto all of your abilities basically all the time. The stats on it are also really, really good in Smite 2. They removed the attack speed from Smite 1, so it's now just strength, percent pen, and cooldown rate, all absolutely amazing stats for your ability-based junglers like Loki, Thanatos, Thor, that kind of stuff. And yeah, it just adds a bunch of extra damage to all of your abilities. Really good for your ability-based junglers. Tekokage is a great item as well. A big fan of Tekokage. Don't build it on Thanatos. It won't work. You have to use abilities that cost mana, but on every other ability-based jungle, I think this item is very competitive with Jotuns at the moment. Basically, compared to Jotuns, this thing trades 5 strength. It has 5 less strength for 5 more cooldown rate, and also gives the movement speed as well. But of course, you have to be on a god that can keep it active pretty consistently, and also be on a god that really values the movement speed. So like Thor, I don't think particularly wants this item because it can be kind of hard for him to keep it up because he's very much an all-in god, and he doesn't really need the movement speed as much. But on something like Loki or Thanatos, if he could build it, this would be a really good item on Thanatos. Susanoo probably likes this as well. He's fairly consistently throwing out abilities and getting the movement speed value out of this. So yeah, Tekko Kage and Jotuns, very similar items. You build them in very similar places in the build. It just kind of depends on what god you're playing. You might want Tekko, you might want Jotuns. Titan's Bane up to A tier for the same reason as Obsidian Shard. You're going to need this in your jungler builds and probably in your ADC builds as well if you want additional pen. Moving into some of the ADC items now though. So Deathbringer I think is good. Deathbringer's fine. This is obviously if you're going a crit build, you need Deathbringer in the build. It just increases your crit damage. That's just something you need. Musashi's dual swords isn't great, honestly. I'm going to throw it to usually bad. The movement speed that this provides on crit is just worse than, we'll talk about Demon Blade, which I'll throw to B tier. Demon Blade provides attack speed on crit, which is just usually going to be more valuable for you in terms of DPSing people down as a hunter. So usually, unless you're going all three of these items, there's no reason to go Musashi's when you could go Demon Blade instead. Death Metal I'll also throw to good. I think these are all pretty good crit items at the moment. We saw quite a lot of use out of Death Metal at the LAN, and this is the one that AoE buffs your whole team with strength, intelligence, and attack speed, I think. I do think this isn't like as good as the LAN made it seem, because in the LAN they were rushing it first item on ADC and try to do like 5-minute gold furies with it, whereas if you're just playing random ranked and casuals, you're probably not going to have the team coordination to be able to do that. But I do think Death Metal is still a pretty good item. Dagger of Frenzy we haven't really seen built at all, so I'm going to throw it to usually bad. I think this item does have some potential. The cooldown on it is incredibly low. You can have this up like twice per wave. Like you can use it once on the wave and then use it once again after the wave's cleared to poke the enemy down and stuff. I think it can be quite good, but no one really builds it at the moment. I don't see too much use for it. Oboe I'll throw to decent / situational. Oboe is fine. I think Oboe is pretty decent. It gives you a lot of attack speed if that's something you need in your build. You don't have to worry about overcapping with it anymore in Smite 2, which is nice as well. But ultimately, I don't think it's something you're building in every single ADC build. I think it's just something you can build if you really need a lot more attack speed. Sunbeam Bow I'll also throw to decent. I don't think it's super situational. I mean, it is in a way, but I think you could build this in most ADC builds, but I just don't think it's as good after the nerfs. I think it's just decent. I think a lot of the time there's better stuff you could be rushing in ADC than Sunbeam Bow. Dominance is decent. Dominance is fine. I think Executioner is better though, which we'll throw to the A tier. This is basically like the Titan's Bane or Obsidian Shard equivalent. You need this in every single ADC build for your percent pen, and I think it's better than Dominance. Speaking of though, maybe I'll throw Dominance up to the B tier. Dominance is kind of like Executioner, but just a bit worse a lot of the time. Kin Size goes straight to needs nerfs. This item is busted in the game right now. They gave it a buff recently. It used to be just 4% max health damage. Now it's 4% max health damage and up to 4% more based on the difference of health between you and your target. So on squishies, this is still doing 4% max health, which is still solid on hit damage even against squishy targets because they have like almost 2.5k max health in the late game. So it's just going to be adding 100 damage to all of your autos, you know, as if this item had 100 strength, which is kind of nuts. And then against tanks, it's going to be doing, you know, far more. This item's busted. Some solo laners rush it first item. Some ADCs even rush it first item, but this should be in every single ADC build. Even if you go and crit, you want Kins in your build. Hasten Fatalis, I'll throw it usually bad. This item got heavily nerfed. Rightfully so. It's an incredibly annoying item to play against. I wish they just remove it, to be honest. But they've nerfed it into a place where, like, it's kind of bad now and you sacrifice way too much damage to be able to go this. It's only a 75% basic attack movement penalty reduction as well, so you're not going absolutely zooming with it. And yeah, it's just kind of bad. Braggy's Harp, I'll throw to good. I think Braggy's Harp is still decent, but generally ADCs have gone away from rushing this first item, but you can still build it. I think it's still pretty good. Devos, I'll throw to decent, I guess. You could argue Devos is D tier. Honestly, it's kind of fallen off. People don't really build it in the ADC role anymore, but I'll throw it to decent because I think it is still okay. It does still come with lifesteal, strength, flat pen. It's just very slow to get online as well. But that's most of the ADC items. Let's move on to some tank items. So first up, we have some physical defense stuff. So Breastplate of Valor, I think, is decent. I don't think it's anything too crazy. It's just your classic physical defense cooldown rate item is pretty decent. Berserker Shield, I think, is decent as well. I don't think Berserker Shield is anything too crazy. He has both kinds of protections now, not just physical protections, which can be kind of valuable, I guess, but ultimately I don't think it's that good. Mystical Mail, I'll throw to good. I think Mystical Mail is pretty good right now. The base stats on it are very attractive with 400 health and 40 physical pro. It's going to make you very tanky in the laning phase, and then obviously the pulsing out magical damage can be really valuable for wave clear and just extra damage in lane. I think Mystical Mail is one of the better rushes against physical matchups for some gods, especially Guardians that might struggle to clear the wave. Leviathan's Hide is situational, obviously, but I also don't think it's that great of an item, even when it is good in a certain situation against auto attackers. Hide the Nemean Lion, same spot in my opinion. I don't think Hide the Nemean Lion's super good either. I think it's being underrated a little bit by most people. A lot of people would say like it's awful, never build it, it's absolute ass. I don't think it's that bad. The base stats on it are pretty okay, and it does provide a decent amount of reflect, and the Thorns effect on the active can be really powerful. Void Shield is great. Void Shield is really good right now. This thing provides 15% shred and an aura around you, as well as half decent base stats. Really good in Bruiser jungler builds. You know, the Titan's Bane is 20% pen. This is 15% pen, but you also get a lot of really good tank stats from it as well. So pretty much not quite essential in solo lane builds, I don't think, but very, very good in solo lane builds, and also can fit into Bruiser jungle builds as well. Void Shield's really good. Flat Shield also great. I don't think I'm going to throw it to the needs nerfs category. I don't think it's quite that good, but it is really good at the moment. It has already been nerfed. Supports don't build it as much now, but in most solo lane builds, you're going to want a Glad Shield if you're ability based. And even some Bruiser junglers can go Glad Shield as well. Spectral Armor, decent slash situational. Again, I don't think this is even that good in the situation where you're playing into crit, but if you are playing into heavy crit, you probably do want this. Helm of Radiance is just kind of bad. I'm going to throw it to usually bad. This is the int physical protection item, and you gain more physical protection, I believe, when you take damage. Yeah, you gain up to 5 physical protection, stacks up to 5 times. It's just not that good. You know, even when this is fully stacked up, it's 60 int 50 physical prot with no health. It's not even that good of an item, even when it's fully stacked up. Stampede needs nerfs. Stampede is absolutely insane right now. This is the AoE team sprint active, where it gives you slow immunity, massive movement speed, and attack speed for 6 seconds. This thing's just nuts. It's on a cooldown of 90, which is kind of ridiculous. It should be in every support build. It should be in most solo lane builds, and it should even occasionally be in Bruiser jungle builds as well. This item's nuts. It will probably get nerfed very soon, but it's very good right now. Shield of the Phoenix is good, in my opinion. Shield of the Phoenix is fine. I don't think it deserves an A tier, but on certain gods, it can be really good. It's really good on Mordred, obviously. Really good on Ra with the Ra solo build. It's a pretty good item, but I don't think it's anything super insane. Moving on to some magical defense, though. Only Hunter's Garb, I think, is good. Only Hunter's is fine. It's not something you're going to be rushing in lane, typically, because you won't get value from the passive, but if you need a bit of magical defense later in your build, you can throw in an Only Hunter's Garb. Serum Negation, this is the insanely high int and magical prot item. This is 70 int and 100 magical prot, which is kind of insane. The issue is, this item's just generally not that good, because you generally don't need that much magical defense is the problem, and there's a lot of other good magical defense items like beads and gargoyle that we'll talk about in a second. In theory, this item's really good. It's just it doesn't really find a niche. A lot of the time, like if this was 100 physical protection, I think it might be a little bit better, just because physical protection is generally a lot more valuable. Most teams have 3 physical, 2 magical, and most like camps and minions and towers do physical damage. But with it being magical, I honestly don't think it's overall that useful. I think I'll throw it to situational, though. You probably can find some use for it. Amanita Charm, is it even good? That's the question. I don't think it is. I think it's decent as in situational. It's countered by anti-heal, and honestly, it's not even that valuable of an effect overall. Really good at assault, though. You should be building this on most tanks in assault. Purification beads, obviously really good. I don't think it needs nerfs. That's the problem. It has fallen off in usage a little bit. Like, support still buy this most games. Solo is still occasionally buy this. But you're rarely seeing it on damage dealers and junglers that much anymore. I don't think it's actually so good that it really needs immediate nerfs, but it is still a really good item. You're probably going to want one of these on your team basically every single game, usually bought by the support. But if you're into a heavy CC comp, you know, you're playing into like Ares, Akate, Fenrir, Athena, that kind of stuff, it can be absolutely valuable to pick these up on a solo laner or even on a Bruiser jungler. You can get away with this. Especially if like you went blink on a jungler and then you realized a bit later into the game, like, oh, I'm getting farmed by CC, you can go beads for yourself. Screeching Gargoyle, these nerfs alongside Stampede, these two physical and magical side of the coin in terms of these absolutely busted tank active items at the moment. These both need nerfs. Gargoyle is like 60 magical prot, 20 cooldown rate, and then active silences everyone in front of you, and they lose 20% of their protections, which is kind of nuts. Basically, every support and solo laner is building this somewhere in their build, and some Bruiser junglers are building it as well. It's absolutely insane. It will probably get nerfed very soon. Genji's Guard is fine. I think I'll throw it to decent slash situational. I don't think Genji's Guard is like super amazing right now, honestly. It can be okay as like a rush in the solo lane laning phase, but a lot of the time you would rather just go Gargoyle. It has very similar stat spreads, but Gargoyle has that really useful active effect that can be okay in lane, but also really just useful in late game team fights that Genji's Guard isn't quite as useful. Shoguns, I'll throw to decent situational as well. Honestly, Shogun's base stats are kind of ass, I'm not gonna lie, but it can be okay if you have like a double hunter composition with an armor in solo. The armor can build Shoguns and you can kind of shred towers and objectives with it. It can be good in certain situations. Voidstone is decent. I don't think Voidstone's anything too crazy. It's just outclassed by Gargoyle. Like, Gargoyle also shreds off a percentage of their prots, not permanently. It's only for 4 seconds after you use it, but often that's all you need to be able to kill someone. And the active effect is just going to be way more useful than the Voidstone passive, honestly. So generally, Voidstone's okay, but Gargoyle is just better. Phoenix Feather, I like this item, but I think it's not honestly that great. I think it's decent. I think it can be used, but it's just so hard countered by anti-heal is the main problem. Yes, they added that effect where you pulse out a ring of fire, but like, this thing's on a 3-minute cooldown, and if you get like hit with Divine Ruin and Ankh right as you use it, and you heal like 200 with it, and you've wasted a 3-minute cooldown, it's very sad. If they made this like not affected by anti-heal or something, it would become really, really good. I think if it was un-anti-healable, it'd be a great item, but it's just the fact that anti-heal is so prevalent right now. Everyone's building anti-heal like most games, and it just gets almost no value. Lifebinder, I think is good. Lifebinder's pretty decent. We saw quite a bit of use of this out of like Morrigan support in Vegas. Some solo laners occasionally building it. I think it's pretty decent. It's very good for winning trades. The cooldown on it's very low. You're going to get a lot of healing and shielding out of it. Stone of Binding is a great item right now. out. On a lot of solo laners, you can find good use for this, and on a lot of Bruiser jungles with the Bruiser jungle build, it can be really good. You can just get a lot of pen available. You know, in a Bruiser jungle build, you got something like Void Shield, Binding, and Swan. You're shredding off 15% here, 15 flat here, 20 flat here. You can get a lot of pen and be dealing very close to true damage to squishies. Cersei's Hexstone, great item. I don't think it needs nerfs, honestly. Maybe a tiny bit to the cooldown, maybe go up to like 120 seconds instead of 90, maybe. But I don't think it's super broken compared to like what else is up in the S tier, but Cersei's is really good. It comes with health and cooldown rate, a lot of health and a decent amount of cooldown rate, and then obviously the active effect that turns you into a ball. It's basically a beads on a 90-second cooldown, but you can also reposition yourself with it. So it can be good defensively, it can be good aggressively. It's just a really good item that like a lot of solo laners want, some supports want as well. Maybe even some Bruiser junglers could throw one of these in. Prophetic Cloak is good, I will say. It's very, very slow is the main problem. You know, if you're rushing this in solo into something that's building like proper defense against you, you know, something like a Glad Shield or a Mystical Mail, you're going to get outclassed in the laning phase pretty heavily. And because there's so much neutral farm available in the side lanes, especially solo lane, you know, you've got to secure the gold camp, the totem, your back camps, their back camps, blue buff. There's so much stuff that you want to do that if you're building Prophetic early on in the laning phase and getting out pressure because of it, you're going to lose a lot of farm, and that's the main issue. It's also very slow to get online, but if you can get this thing fully stacked, it is the best defense item in the entire game for keeping you alive. So it's a little bit riskier, a little bit slower to get online, but it can be good. Eye of Providence, I'll throw a decent. I think it's okay-ish, but ultimately you don't really need this as much now that a bunch of wards have been added to camps. A lot of the times you can get a lot of ward coverage just from the free wards from camps a lot of the time, but if you do want to just have like absolutely omega ward coverage, you can go this. Gauntlet of Thebes, I think I will now throw to good, honestly. It did get buffed, so it now has 10 more stacks. It has 40 stacks now, so you're getting 40 of each prots and 150 health. It's still not great. The base stats still aren't super attractive, especially considering you need to stack it, and if you're trying to get active as a support in the early game, you'd much rather just have something that gives you immediate stats. And honestly, I've convinced myself out of it. I'm going to throw it down to decent. I think if they gave this thing like 250 health instead of 150 or 50 prots instead of 40, it might go up a tier or something like that. But ultimately, it's really slow, and even when you have it fully stacked, it's not that efficient as a defense item. It's just like maybe ever so slightly better than most other things that give you all the stats immediately. Eye of the Storm, I think, is usually bad. I don't think there's much reason to build this item. I like it. This is the one that creates a vortex around you but drains your health every second. And I think it can be okay. It has some like niche uses, like, you know, Cabrakan or Sobek can be good uses of this item, but ultimately I don't think it's that good. Pribwin is good. I don't think it deserves to be an A tier in my opinion, but Pribwin can be solid in a lot of your solo lane builds. The base stats aren't amazing on it, but the active effect can be really good. It's got a very powerful slow, deals a good amount of damage. The shield isn't massive, to be honest. You don't get that much value out of the shield because it is the glorious Pribwin version. It's not the blue Pribwin from Smite 1. But you do get a lot of damage out of this, and it's a very long duration slow that reapplies when the shield breaks, and that can be really valuable. Speaking of slows, Pharaoh's Curse will put to B tier as well. This thing did get nerfed relatively heavily, and also the addition of Stampede into basically everyone's build has kind of made this thing a bit useless. They're on the same cooldown, I believe, or very similar cooldown, so oftentimes when your Pharaoh's Curse is up, you're going to pop it, and then they will just immediately have a Stampede to completely hard counter everything that your Pharaoh's Curse was doing. So ultimately, I think it's okay, but I think if Stampede gets nerfed down to where it's not being built every single game, and maybe there's only like one Stampede on the support, then Pharaoh's Curse becomes a lot better. Curse Tank, straight to the A tier for the same reason all the other anti-heal items are here. Divine Ruin, Brawlers, and Curse Tank, all really good. Anti-heal super valuable right now. Helm of Darkness, I'll throw to B. I think Helm of Darkness is really good. It's a bit situational. You don't want it on every single pick, but it can be good on, you know, some mid laners that want to use it for defensive capabilities. It can be good on some solo laners that want to use it to engage, like Hades. I think it can be really good. Ymir sees decent use of this as well. You know, you can stealth in, freeze someone, wall them out. Hussar's Wings is A tier. Hussar's Wings is really good. This is the permanent slow immunity item with absolutely incredible base stats. It's got like 400 health and 40 of each protections or something silly. It might be 40 physical, 30 magical. It's relatively expensive. I think it's 3,000 gold, but it's more than worth the cost because the base stats are so good, and the passive effect being completely immune to slows. It just absolutely deletes certain matchups. You know, Cupid, you can just walk out of Cupid ult. Nemesis, if she can ult you, basically, she normally wants to ult a tank and blow them up. She just can't ult you because the slows they're just never going to connect on you, and you can just walk away from her. Jade Scepter, I think I'll throw to good. I think this item's being underrated right now. No one really builds it, but I think it can be really good as a defensive utility option for some like mid laners that really kind of don't want to be dived on. You know, stuff like Zeus, stuff like Ra that kind of like don't have that ability to just dash away or whatever. They can kind of self-peel by knocking people away with Jade Scepter. It is hard countered by displacement immunity, so it's not good into certain matchups. It's not good into Loki. It's not good into Thor, where they just have like easy access displacement immunity that they're going to dump on you as soon as they dive you. But overall, I think this item can see more use than it's seeing at the moment. I think it can be useful for keeping defensive mid laners safe. Golden Blade, I think it's just kind of bad. We'll put it in situational. Maybe you can find some use for it on like armor solo or whatever. Maybe as some more auto attack junglers get added in, it might see a bit more use. You know, stuff like Arachne and Baka. But at the moment, I don't think Golden Blade is super good. Scepter of Dominion, we will throw to decent / situational for ranked and casual. I think in pro play, this item is probably good. We did see a lot of good use out of it in the Vegas tournament, the big Fire Giant steal where they put it on Fire Giant, made it immune, and then stole it. I think this item can be good, but honestly, I'm not going to lie, in your random ranked and casual games, you're not going to have the team coordination to be able to use this item super well. But if you think you do, if you're queuing, you know, 5 stacking casuals, or you're queuing with like 2 or 3 people in ranked and you think you have the coordination to make the item work, I think it is quite good. Shift of Shield is good. I don't think it's anything super insane, but it is just a big stat pile that gives you a lot of protections, health, and power. Spirit Robe, again, I think it's good. I don't think it's anything super crazy. There's a lot of better items that you can be building, but I think it's fine if you want like an anti-CC item. Triton's Conch, I think, is situational. This can be okay on some gods that like really want health and also really want a combination of strength and int. Mordred's a good example of this. This could be good on Chak as well. Those gods that are like hybrid strength and int scaling but also want a ton of health, this item can be good, but ultimately it's not anything super insane. Wish Granting Pearl, I think, is good. This is the insane amount of intelligence, max health, and mana. Like 120 int, 500 health is really good. Obviously, it's insanely expensive. It's 35.50 gold. But if you think the game's going to go late, you can pick this up and it's just an absolute ton of stats. You know, 120 int is more than basically every other int item in the game. So you're not really going to lose that much damage going for this, and you get straight up 500 max health, which can make you survive a lot of like jungle dives in the late game as a mid laner. I think it's quite good, but obviously very slow, very expensive. Yogis, I think, is decent, honestly. Honestly, I'm going to throw it's usually bad. I don't think Yogis is that good, to be honest. It just has no protections on it, so it's really bad to like build early game, and if you're building it late game, you're often just getting anti-healed, or you're getting blown up so fast that the regen stats won't really matter. And finally, we have Eros Bow, which I think is awful. I wouldn't recommend building Eros Bow basically ever. It does have some interesting interactions with like Dance of Burrow clones. You can kind of make that work, but ultimately, the healing from it is pretty good in like Dance of Burrow's case. But in the case of just marking someone and regularly auto-attacking with like a Cupid support, I don't think this item's very good. But yeah, there you go. That is my full item tier list for Smite 2 at the moment. You got your absolute best items in the game that need immediate nerfs. You've got your really good items that I don't think necessarily need immediate nerfs, but they're very good for a lot of your builds. And then you got the stuff that you absolutely shouldn't be building down here. Hopefully this has been helpful for you in terms of crafting your builds. Let me know what you think down below, and I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.